Celine2Peas writes, I need help with my titles. I always seem to have a problem with them. I keep the title for the end and then wonder where should I place the title? What colour and what letters should I use? I need a better title process. Glitter Girl, can you help Celine2Peas out of her tricky title trouble?
Of course I can. I think today it will be helpful to look not just at the titles, but at the whole process of building a page and maybe reconsidering what order you add things to your layout. Today I'm actually working with a double page spread with 5 4x6 photos. This is really similar to a layout design that I shared in the 4x6 Photo Love series, but a little different because I used a portrait photo for the 5th image. And this particular day, I just happened to have taken everything in landscape. So I have 4 landscapes that are going to go right across the whole double page, and then one other one that I want to bring a little bit more attention to. Now, with double page backgrounds, I only very rarely buy 2 of the same pattern paper. But there are a few times when I will. One is if it's a really versatile print that I know I will use lots, not only as a full 12 by 12, but also cut into pieces. So something really simple like this, a yellow chevron, works well for that. This is actually from the original Amy Tangerine collection, and if you kind of missed the original Amy Tangerine collection the first time around, or if you miss it because it was a really lovely collection and you'd like to work with it again, but you've used everything that you have, it is now available as a paper pack where you get all the different designs in a tablet. So just thought I would point that out, but I really love the yellow chevron and I've used it a lot. So here I'm going to use it as my background, and then I'm going to add more pattern paper in. For this page, I've pulled out a few other patterns to create the color combination I want. I want to include just a little bit of orange. I don't want it to be overwhelming, but I love it as just a little border here and there. So this is also from the original Amy Tangerine. I like the mix of the yellow and orange in this one, which is Amy Tangerine Ready, Set, Go. So I might use one of these as the journaling box. This one is from American Crafts Soho Garden Collection. It has black and white on the other side. But I liked this aqua and green with a little bit of yellow, which would pull it into the background here. This one from Simple Stories Snap to cut apart, and I actually thought it would be funny. Well, it's probably very silly, but I thought it would be funny to include the cheese camera Polaroid because the layout is about cheese. There we go. That's how cheesy I really can be. And this lovely green from Studio Calico and their new Darling Dear collection. So I'm going to use those. I've also pulled out this chevron vellum. It's a white print in a slightly diagonal chevron on the vellum paper. That's also from Darling Dear, and I'm not sure how I'm going to use it, but I really like it, so I'm going to try. I'm going to start with the normal pattern papers, not the ones that I want to cut elements from, but these 3 are my large pattern papers. Now I said from the beginning that I knew I wanted this one in small doses, so I'm thinking a border punch would be a great idea with that, and I'm going to go to one of my favorite border punches and just do some strips to go along the bottom of the page. Once I have those borders for the bottom of the page, then I start to look at my 2 other pattern papers that I wanted to include, and I have a lot of space left at the top of the layout. But I only have one of each of these pattern papers in my collection. I don't have more, so I can't do more than half the page if I want it to go across both. So what I tend to do is make sure that I'm cutting into boxes that are 6 inches or less. So that way I know that I always have enough to match that up with another box across the other side of the layout. It does. With all those pieces cut, inked, and glued in place, then the foundation of my layout is pretty much intact. I still need to add that other photo here. So I've cut the vellum to a mat to be larger than the photo, and I cut the mat to 4.5 by 6.5, and in looking at it I could have gone with an even larger mat to make a slightly bolder statement with the vellum, but I'll center it on what I've cut. And then I'll add this using the photo to line it up. So I want this photo to line up with the top of those, and then the vellum's going to overlap. That also brings this up, since this box is 4 inches tall, that brings the vellum up onto the green pattern paper as well to bring this all together. And then the one other thing I want to do before I go on to my other page elements is to bring some of this color down to the bottom of the page so it doesn't look like the orange is isolated and this is the blue and green part of the layout and this is the orange and yellow part. I want it to feel like the colors are consistent all the way across. So with the leftover piece that I had from my green pattern paper, I was able to just cut that in half so I can have a green border that will go across the page at the bottom of the layout. And what I tend to do is if I have elements that go all the way across, so maybe a word that needs to be read all the way across, or the patterns do work out really well in the middle, and I'm using ring binders, then I just take the 2 page protectors and I sew them together down the middle. That way when you get to this page in the album, they're stuck together. But in this case, unless my title may very well go across, so maybe I will need to sew it then. But in a ring binder without sewing the page protector, it would just be viewed with a little bit of space in between because you'll have the binding rings in the middle. So it's not a really dramatic difference at all, but I know that if you've changed from a post-bound system to using a ring binder, it can be a little disconcerting in trying to figure out how things can flow in a ring binder with that gap in the middle. It's at this point in the layout that I add my title and my writing. I don't save it for last because I want to make sure I have enough space to add all the words that I want on the page. And I know that in a layout like this, I'm still going to have plenty of room for embellishment. I know that I won't be using these spaces down here for journaling, so I'll be able to add something there. I can add something on this side of the photo, and I'm thinking that most of my title and writing will fit here in this kind of central part of the page, so I could also add some embellishment here in the top corner if I need to. For my title, I want to use these corrugated thickers, and they're in a shade of green that's just 1 or 2 tones darker than the green I've used in the pattern paper. And that's something I tend to let guide my lettering decisions, is to look at the colors that I have and then see if I can find something that's just 1 or 2 shades different, a little bit lighter or a little bit darker, can really help give some depth to the color combination that you use on your page. Now I'm also going to use a smaller alphabet for a subtitle and possibly a smaller alphabet for part of the title itself, because part of what I want to write in this is the name of the stand where they make these, and it's a really long name. The dairy that makes this is it's not a brief name. So I'm going to start with that largest word. I'm going to spell all of that out, and then I can evaluate how much space that took up, how many letters I have left, and then I can decide if I want to do the rest of the title also in the large letters, or if I need to bring in something a little bit smaller so that it's not too overwhelming or I won't run out of space. In this case, I'm going to start here and start spelling backwards. And I know that I have a subtitle that I want to run underneath. So I'm going to leave just a little bit of gap, and I'm going to start with the edge of the photo and work backwards. Now I won't press them all the way down until I get to this edge, because if I end up with a letter that's halfway over, I'd rather shuffle things along and make sure that that I'm not cutting a letter in half. But you certainly, if you're going to have the pages side by side, you can cut a letter in half and it will work just fine. Once I've added the most major word in the title, something that's going to be larger and bolder than the rest of the wording, then I can make the other decisions. So I know that my title is going to be quite long, and I'm pretty sure I don't want anything else in this giant font. I just want the one big word to be in that lettering. So I want something smaller to start and something smaller to end. Now it could be that I could use the same lettering for the beginning and the end, but I want it to read like title, subtitle. So to me, I think I should make that separate. Otherwise, it might just read like one really long title with one major word in the middle. And I'd rather it read almost as if there were a semicolon here and this is the subtitle. So I looked at my smaller letter stickers, and I quite often use mini markets. So I pulled out different colors that I could use. I had 2 shades of green, had the black and cream, which was pretty high on the list of options, and then also aqua that was pretty close to the blue but not exactly, and I could go back to yellow, which I'd used in the background. Unfortunately, my orange sheet, which was what I was looking for, thinking I could pull up a bit of that orange, my orange sheet has about 3 letters left at the bottom, and that is just not going to spell out what I need. So I'm going to use one of these, and I think it will be the green, and I could use that at the beginning, or maybe the aqua at the beginning. But then I also wanted to add that subtitle, and for that I wanted a different kind of font. So I went to a scripty font, and in this instance I chose one from Webster's Pages, and they have a big script font on one side, and then the 3 smaller versions is the same font but in 3 different colors. And I know that that's what I want to use here so that it'll read as a secondary thought. So I decided I would try placing it on the side of a piece of paper so that I could see how much room it was going to take up. I find that when I use the same alphabets time and time again, then I know how much room they're going to take up, and just from practice you can get the spacing quite right to know if something's going to fit or not. But I haven't used this font very much at all, so I wasn't sure how much room it would take up once it was spaced. Now, I'm just doing this with a scrap of paper from the side of my trimmer, but if you have a look at Amy Tan's Project Life video here at 2Peas last Saturday, she shows this technique with a clear ruler, which gives you a bit more control. Now, I have 2 options here. I can either have this end at the same point as the N here, so the 2 lines of text will be justified on the side, or I can look for descenders. Letters that go up are called ascenders, and letters that go down below the baseline are descenders. They make great places to put extra elements. So if this didn't go over the edge of the page, then I would probably tuck this writing in just here, because it's almost as if the little corner makes a shelf or a little spot to hold the writing. So I look for all sorts of natural spaces like that give me a place to add elements, and it avoids having white space that gets trapped somewhere. It's just something to look for, any natural corner where you could add something in. But in this case, I think that will make it quite difficult to read over the center of the 2 page. So I think I will bring it over here and have them end in the same place. So then I can just line that up, press all the top of the letters down, and gently pull it away. And now I can choose a color, and actually seeing that down makes me think I was too hasty in thinking blue or green, and I'd quite like to use the yellow over here, because then that will bring this across. Now, before I stick these down, I want to look at the other elements I'm including. I know I wanted some lines for journaling, and I wanted to use this bit of embellishment, so I'm thinking these will go over here quite nicely. And that means that this set of wording could bridge the gap between these elements over here and the rest of the title so that it will feed all the way across. That means I need to figure out exactly where these are going to go so that I can place the lettering so that it will all go across. So sometimes my process means that I have to stop and start and consider other elements. Okay, here's where I get to the part where I have to just try different things and see what will work. I now have my journaling space and the start of my embellishment, but I have this big gap here, and I want my smaller lettering to start the title to run from the journaling into these large letters. But I have this awkward space here, and it's not enough room to include the title. It's going to need more space than that. So at that point, then I start going to the the different things that I've already pulled out and seeing what I can bring from those supplies and put in this space. So my first realization was I've only used that orange pattern paper at the very bottom of the layout. So I cut a box from that pattern paper that I can add in here to give me a start. Now I know straight away I'm covering up these flowers and I'm totally okay with that. If you wanted to preserve the flower on the design, then you'd need to put these layers underneath. Easy enough. So, but now I'm just showing part of the flowers, and that's kind of worse than covering them all up. So this is from the same page as the journaling box. And I'll just run this underneath to start the idea of layers here. And then I started looking for maybe something with dimension, and I went to my embellishments. In my Amy Tangerine embellishments, I have this one which had another layer on top, and I took that layer off and used it on a layout on its own. But I'm actually thinking there's a lot of potential for this to become part of the title, so I could put part of the wording right on top of that shape. Because these are on a clear backing, I tend to just cut away the backing so that I can move them around the layout without worrying about my adhesive sticking to something that I'm not 100% sure about. So now that gives me something kind of like this, and now I've got a lot of boxes going on and just this little bit of the floral design left. So I started looking for something round, and this pattern paper collection that has the cut out Polaroids also has one that has all sorts of different speech bubbles. So I cut this from that, and now I'm going to have some writing space here, and then I can run my title across here, and that should work. So I'm going to go ahead and adhere this, and then I'll spell out my title on top of this to get that all in the right spot before I peel off the backing and attach it. Okay, now I have all my wording with the exception of the date, which I tend to add in the embellishment. So I'll hold off on the date for the moment, and I've got all of my lettering added in and all my journaling written down. So I then start to look for where I can place some embellishment. And I'd like to start even on a double page spread with groups of 3. So I took my scraps from the blue feather print paper and punched 3 labels and inked those edges. And then by placing them on the page, I can figure out 3 areas for embellishment. So I want to add something in the bottom corner here, something over here with this larger Polaroid embellishment, and then if I look at where that could form a triangle, I'm either looking at something at the bottom, which I think is a bit too square, or something that draws more attention to this photo, which is what I wanted to do. So I don't want to overlap this tag or this label onto this paper because it's the same design. So instead I'll bring it up to the top here. Now I don't want to go ahead and adhere those because I need to add other layers. I'd like to add in some more of this yellow and orange coloring. So I went to my washi tape. I had a yellow chevron that's just like the pattern paper, but it's a bit too much the same. So I decided I would go for something a little bit different with this smile printed tape, which is from KI Memories. And by placing that on the page, then I have a nice grounding to add more embellishment. Now that gives me something that's the same in each of the 3 spots, but now I'd like to add some things that make each one unique. So with that same embellishment set that had the layered piece that I used here, there's a sticker that says eat and drink. So I've cut that out on the backing, and I'm thinking that will be a good one to be at the bottom of the page. I need to add in the date and our names and things like that. So I think that will work on this space. And then here I think I'll just add something that's just purely embellishment, a motif. So I'll look for, I could add in this little camera to match that camera, or that might be camera overload, so I'll have a look. But I just want to pile something on top of each one so that each of these has something that's the same, and they'll each have something that's a little bit different. I think this is where I'll call it finished for this week. I just kept adding tiny little embellishments to those groupings after I had my wording and everything else attached there. So I have orange enamel dots, I have circular embellishments from the Ready Set Go collection, I have some snap stickers, some fabric stickers by Amy Tangerine, and I added the little snap arrows as well. So all sorts of different things, just kind of having a little bit of fun to cluster each one up. And if you want to look at some more details about adding clustered embellishments, there's a whole Glitter Girl adventure just on that, so I'll link that up below and you can check it out if you want to look at that a little bit more. But in general, I just wanted to share this double page with you and show you how I build in my title as part of the process. And sometimes the title even sends me on a little bit of a fact-checking spree. I had to make sure that I had the name of the dairy spelled correctly, and then I ended up with a little bit of debate in my head over whether queuing would use the second E, and I found out a funny little fact, which is you can spell it both ways. You can spell queuing with the E or without the E, but the science of people standing in lines is spelled with the E. So since this whole thing is about the idea that this dairy that does this cheese sandwich is always listed in the top 10 sandwiches in all of London, but the queue is really, really long. And we braved it one day, and I took pictures of the whole thing because we thought it was quite funny. So I figured that's definitely devoted to the science of standing in a line. So I went with that spelling, and definitely something I wouldn't need to do for every single layout, but nice to learn a little something as I made my title. So there we go. I hope that you will join in this week's challenge, which is something very, very simple. It's to create a layout with a title, and then in the description, when you upload your page to the gallery, tell us about your process for adding the title. So you can use the title in any way that you want on the page, but your challenge is to explain to us how you made that decision, maybe why you chose the colors, how you chose the spacing, why you chose that wording. Just tell us a little bit about your process for adding a title to your layout. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.
Join us next week for the continuing adventures of Glitter Girl and the ongoing mystery of the scrapbooker behind the mask at 2peasinabucket.com.